Garlic is coming up. Oh yeah. Well, hey everyone, welcome to PDX Garden Home, and I am just lounging around here in the potting shed. Actually, it's the end of my gardening day. I feel like a quitter, but you know, it is late December here. We're approaching the Christmas holiday, and it has turned very cold here in Portland. And, you know, I say I feel like a quitter because I always tell people that, you know, most people will say to me, and I'm sure to the rest of you gardeners, you hear this a lot, oh, you garden, so what do you do the rest of the year after fall, you know, before spring? You know, what are you doing, you know, in those months of when it gets rainy and cold or darker or whatever, right? And depending on where you are, that could last from October through April or whatever, right? And so, yeah, I always kind of chuckle because my answer is, well, I still garden. You know, most of the time I can still garden here in Portland, even though it's winter and even though there's not as much light. There's definitely things to do. And that's what I'm going to talk about in today's video, is all the things that I'm up to during the winter here in the garden. But I started this by saying I feel like a quitter because, you know, there is a point, even though I laugh when people ask as a gardener, what do I do during the winter? Because I usually am still gardening. There is that point where I too stop because it's just not any fun anymore. I think I technically could keep going, but when it is down into the low 40s, down, you know, and below, and it's wet and maybe it's rain or ice or snow or whatever, you know, there's still things I could do outside, but my hands are literally frozen, and it's just not as fun to do it. And, you know, the reality is here in the Portland area, that doesn't last very long. I mean, it'll come and go, and it may be a few days at a time or a week at a time or whatever. And so we're now entering our holiday, the last week of the year, and it's expected to be cold like that this week. So what a great time to just hunker down and work on my seeds and planning for next year. And so maybe I won't do as much gardening outside, and yeah, I'm a little bit of a quitter by not doing as much outside, but I'll make myself okay with that. Well, I finally got a Gerardol pumpkin. First time I've grown it. I only got one out of it. It was growing entire season. Yeah, didn't make it in time for Halloween or Thanksgiving, but it's here and it's looking good. I mean, I don't know if it's good eating. I guess I'll look that up. I think it's just decoration is the reason I was growing it. It kind of looked cool on the package, and I'd seen it before in markets and stuff and thought, hey, it'd be cool to grow one of those. So got myself one. What am I doing this rainy December weekend? Believe it or not, I'm still planting tulips. And yeah, hopefully it's not too late. I got my tulips delivered kind of when you normally would. They were delivered to me, I think, by late October. And some of them in the bag kind of got moldy, and they're kind of like disintegrating, or they're kind of mushy. And so, yeah, I think some of my tulip bulbs have actually rotted, and that's a shame just because I ran out of time. I didn't get them in the ground fast enough. I mean, I'm trying not to blame the vendor on that because I'm not sure. It seems like that shouldn't necessarily have happened, that I should have been able to kind of keep them stored well in the shed for a month, and that wouldn't have been too much of a problem. But I also can say, you know, in all fairness, you know, that they did, you know, all the shipping of tulips from two different vendors that I got, both clearly said, you know, plant immediately, and I didn't do that. So, but you know, the ones that I dug up from last year, they're fine actually. They're not rotting. I left them out in a basket, so they're not kind of in this kind of plastic thing with the holes in it. They're just in an open basket, and some of them kind of sprouted, but they didn't mold and start to disintegrate. So, yeah. We've got the saved tulip bulbs from last year. As you can see in here, they're sprouting a bit. So I hope that's okay. I'm gonna go ahead and put them in the ground. You know, I was saying in a different segment that some of the purchased tulips, the bulb itself was turning mushy. This bulb is not mushy. So I'm thinking maybe it's gonna be okay. So I'm gonna get these in the ground and create quite the tulip show, hopefully. Hey, I love this garden cart behind me, but the thing that I don't like so much is that the tools kind of flop around, and particularly my hoe, which I find very helpful to have on hand. It's got a sharp blade on the end, and so when I'm pulling it along, it can like be kind of poking into my shoulder, or I'm afraid I'm going to slip and fall into it or something, right? And so You know, I wonder if you're like me, that when you see things like this, you start dreaming up elaborate solutions. And I was thinking about it. I was like, well, maybe I can find some kind of holster for it online, or a leather, something really cool or whatever. And then realized, why don't I just throw a bucket over it? Of course, right? So, and in fact, this old bucket is going to work just fine for that. So yeah, simple solutions to not too big of a problem. Winter is the time for infrastructure projects, at least for me. Well, I should say late fall into winter, because there is a short window for that, for me, that goes December through January. After that, we're going to get into the prime time for starting and raising seedlings. I actually kick off my seedlings by January, but it really is going to kick into full gear when it comes in February. So what I really should be calling this video is what I'm up to in December through January at PDX Garden Home. My winter infrastructure projects this year include a number of things. Here's a quick list of things that I can walk you through. First, I've been setting up my basement nursery to get ready for seed starting. Second, we're putting compost out on beds. I say we, I've had a nephew helping me with that part. Third, I'm going to be creating beds around what I call the fruit tree corridor here in the North Garden. I'll show you where I'm talking about that. I haven't gotten that project going yet. Then I'm putting up rabbit fencing around the center beds, another important project that I haven't started yet. A controversial project for winter, trimming bushes and outer hedges. Okay, I'll walk you through my thoughts on that one. And finally, refreshing the cedar paths. As you may have seen in prior videos, I've already started that process, but I'll wait to finish it up at the end of my winter infrastructure period here, so toward the end of January. So that's all the things that I'm up to this winter in the garden, and I'll walk you through those. Let's take a look. Well, I'm here in the basement nursery, and it's pretty bare in terms of there's no seedlings, but I do have my overwintered peppers and eggplants. Setting up this basement nursery has been a matter of reorganizing the shelves where they were so that I could have more room, and setting up some new ones, which I have back there, to create more space for my overwintered peppers and eggplants. And soon I'll have seed starting trays filling these shelves. I figured I should invest in about 12 new lights to maximize my growing space and light up those shelves back there. Last year I purchased some LED 4-foot strips off of Amazon. It's these guys here, and they've worked out pretty well. And so I'm going to do the same for this year and getting more lights to get those shelves set up. I brought the peppers and eggplants in about a month ago, and sure enough, they've been attacked by aphids and some sort of small fly. It's, anywhere from 68 to 72 degrees down here in the basement as we keep things warm. I retaliated with an organic spray that included some neem and soap. And it didn't smell too foul, but it wasn't super pleasant. And what happened was that smell then has permeated the rest of the house, and I didn't account for that. So the odors that are here in the basement are getting kind of sucked up by the ventilation system somehow here, and then spread throughout the house through the air vents. And it's winter, and so the heat's been blowing, and it's just been blowing that smell everywhere. So that's something that I've had to overcome. It's taken about a week for that smell to dissipate, so I won't be doing exactly that treatment again, but it looks like I may have to do some more treatments in here. So that's the status of the basement nursery, and pretty soon, in a few weeks, we're going to be rolling out some seed trays in here, and hopefully we will not have bugs coming from the peppers over to those seed trays. I'm going to take a risk this year and see how we can do on that. Hey, well, one of the projects we do this time of year is putting compost on these garden beds here in the North Garden. There are several reasons for this. Not only is it a way of putting the beds down for winter, but it's also a way that I have a regular cadence for replenishing the beds and keeping them fed, so to speak. It's also a great way to make sure the compost is ready for the next spring season. We're starting out with some homegrown compost this year, which is ready, and it's not going to burn the seedlings in the spring because it's been well composted and ready for a little while now. Our homegrown compost isn't usually enough for all of the beds that we have here in the North Garden. so we normally get compost from local suppliers. The purchased compost that we get, though, is often hot and unfinished, and so it's good to get it this time of year, because if I can just leave it in a pile, or even if I spread it in the beds now, it's not really going to hurt anything. It's got time to finish before the spring season when I put in new plant starts. I've been putting compost down here at PDX Garden Home for several years now. And last year I put so much down in the veggie beds, what I call the main section back that way. They don't even look like they can hold much more. On a few beds I might not even put additional compost down because they're so full. Instead, I'll just put some organic fertilizer for the season. For those that will get compost, it'll just be about 1/4 to 1/2 inch, and possibly with the massive amount of the homemade compost I have, I might not need to buy any this year. It might be all I need. It's been a couple years in the making, this homemade compost that I'm putting down this year, so I don't anticipate I'll be able to do that next fall. I'll likely be back to purchasing at least some of my compost needs by next year. So a project that I haven't gotten started here yet at PDX Garden Home, creating beds around these fruit trees. I call this the fruit tree corridor. Several years ago, when starting the garden at PDX Garden Home, I planted fruit trees in parallel lines here, espalier style, making a walkway down the center of this north garden. I attempted to pave this pathway down the center with cedar chips along the and keep the outside edges as strips of green lawn. As you can see, it didn't quite work out. The center path got overtaken. The lawn has got weeds and grass around the trees, and so yeah, there's just grass and weeds surrounding the trees now. And aside from wanting to get that stuff away from the trunk of the tree so they can so-called breathe a bit, I also have this vision for growing up some vining squashes and other annuals, maybe some vining flowers that can use the fruit trees as a frame for growing vertically. So my plan for this year is to create beds that will span this whole length of the fruit tree corridor, about 20 feet or so, and each bed will be about 2 feet wide, and they'll be kind of down where the trees are here, and that'll get rid of the grass and the weeds there, and I'll fill that in with compost, and then I'll redo the cedar path in the middle. So stay tuned for my progress on this exciting project. I hope to have this set up and ready to go, and we can see how it looks this coming garden season 2022. Well, as I look around the central beds here of the north kitchen garden, I'm seeing where the rabbits have continued to ravage my small plants. It's been a good couple of months since I've seen lots of rabbits out. I think in the cold they must be hunkering down and coming out a little bit less, but still there's evidence that they're coming out and chomping down my veggies. So a rabbit fence around these central beds is going to be a top priority for building this winter. This is another project I haven't started yet, but I'm going to get it done, so stay tuned. Well, one of the items on my list is trimming hedges and the outer hedges and the bushes around here, and I know it's the wrong time of year for this, but as I was explaining before, I've only got a couple of months to do infrastructure. So normally you would say trim your bushes, trim your hedges, do that kind of work in the late part of winter when everything is fully dormant, just before you get to the springtime. So for us that would be more like into February, into March, but I'm going to have to do that probably around the end of January. Well, not probably, that's when I'm going to do it, is end of January, so that I'm done with all that. And in February, March, I'm focused on propagating, which is, I really want to spend my time enjoying that process and not be worrying about all the hedges and bushes that have to be trimmed. So I'm going to take the risk. I know it's risky, but I'll start with the evergreen bushes and hedges where I think it's less risky. The stuff that's not flowering or fruiting, that'll be a little bit less risky when I do it. It will be the last thing I do, so I'll save it so I'll be more like midwinterish rather than late winter when I do it. And yeah, I mean, tell me in the comments how I'm doing wrong by all the plants here, but I've done it this way many times and have yet to really have a problem with it. So that's my plan. Well, finally, I started refreshing the garden paths earlier at the beginning of fall to combat the saturated muddy grounds that we were having around here with all the rain in Portland. I use cedar chips because they smell wonderful and they suppress growth where they're laid. Our paths are usually 1 inch or so of cedar chips, but in the wet spots this year, I put down at least a couple of inches, and in some places even more. We did about half the paths so far in the north garden before running out of the 1 unit of cedar chips that I had purchased. We accomplished the mission I was looking for, which is shoring up the wettest and muddiest paths so that we can traverse them during the rest of our typical wet Portland winter. This is the last infrastructure project I hope to complete before the end of January. That is refreshing the rest of the paths with another load of cedar chips. We'll do that at the end here. So thank you for being here. Have a happy holidays, and looking forward to gardening with all of you in 2022.